Hello, this is the March 2012 video edition of the Iowa General Fund Monthly Revenue Memo. I am Jeff Robinson, Senior Fiscal Analyst for the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, the nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa Legislature. This video will cover the first 9 months of cash fiscal year 2012, July through March. I will also discuss the Iowa employment trend and the impact of recent employment data revisions on the interpretation of that trend. Iowa net general fund revenue, unadjusted, decreased 1% in March when compared to March 2011, with corporate tax deposits significantly up for the month, but sales tax and miscellaneous receipts significantly down. Increased tax refunds also contributed to the negative month. However, one necessary deposit adjustment changes the mildly negative month into one that is in reality very positive. As I discussed in last month's video, fiscal year 2012 is a leap year, and this caused about $38 million of income tax withholding and sales tax revenue to be deposited in February when it would otherwise have been deposited in March. The calendar difference caused the month of February to appear much better than it really was, and it also caused March to appear much worse. If February and March are combined and analyzed together, the growth for the period is positive 3.6%. Turning to the situation year to date, net revenue has increased 2.2%, and for comparison, the March Revenue Estimating Conference, or REC, net revenue estimate for the fiscal year is positive 2.6%. But as has been the story this fiscal year, the low level of year-to-date growth is the result of a cigarette tax allocation change enacted during the 2011 legislative session. If I recalculate the March REC estimate without cigarette and tobacco tax revenue in that math, the estimated growth for the fiscal year adjusts to 4.8%. If I also calculate the year-to-date net general fund revenue growth rate without cigarette and tobacco tax, actual growth through March is 4.9%. So ignoring the cigarette and tobacco tax deposit change, actual growth is just above the most recent REC projection. I will now take a look at net receipts by month over the most recent 13 months. For the following charts, the underlying numbers have not been adjusted for any calendar, law change, or processing issues. Revenue increase months are colored blue, decrease months are red. March 2012 was the first negative net revenue month in the past 4, but as just mentioned, it was negative only because of a calendar issue. Individual income tax revenue is the most significant source of general fund revenue. Individual income tax receipts have recorded increases for all but 2 of the months of the past year. Withholding tax deposit growth, an indicator of employment and wage increases, has begun to show signs of improvement. Sales and use tax revenue experienced its first negative month since last April, but this negative was just a reversal of the deposit date issue that positively influenced February's results. Combined, the months of February and March were essentially unchanged compared to last year, and gross sales and use tax receipts are up 3.5% fiscal year to date. Corporate tax deposits posted their 4th high double-digit increase month in a row, and significant increases have been shown in 9 of the past 11 months. Corporate tax revenue has experienced a substantial turnaround starting May of 2011, and has increased 41% over that period. March is traditionally the second of the 3 big tax refund months. Both February and March refunds show mid-single-digit increases. It will still be 2 months more, however, before tax year 2011 individual income tax returns can be fully analyzed. The Federal Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, publishes monthly employment numbers for every state, and they do so through 2 employment series. The first is called the Household Survey because the data collection involves interviewing members of selected households as to whether the working age members of the household are employed or seeking employment. It is that series that produces the unemployment rate. The second series is called by several names, including non-farm, employer, or establishment series. The data source of this series is initially questionnaires returned by selected employers reporting the numbers of employees they had on a specified date of the month. The results of the employer surveys are later compared to the number of employees all employers report on their quarterly unemployment tax returns. Each year, the Department of Labor uses the quarterly unemployment insurance reports to adjust the survey results to actual employment levels. The adjustment procedure is called benchmarking, and the results for the state level data are released in March of each year. I would now turn to the impact of the March 2012 benchmarking on the two series of employment data. The blue line on this first graph shows the household employment series as it appeared prior to the March 2012 benchmarking. The series shows an Iowa employment situation that bottomed in late 2009, recovered nicely through April 2011, but that recovery stalled and in fact deteriorated back to its low point by late November 2011. The red line shows how the data series now looks, with the sharp recovery period now gone, and in its place is a graph that bounces along the bottom. The most recent 6 months of the household series has displayed improvement. For the non-farm series, the series that is based on employer surveys, the new data red line is generally below the previous line depicted in blue. The estimate of the total number of jobs in Iowa over the past 12 months has generally declined, and the average decline is about 4,100 jobs. The final chart depicts the job losses experienced in Iowa around 3 of the past 4 U.S. recessions, and it is based off of the non-farm job series. The red line depicts the job losses around the recessions of the early 2000s, and the green line depicts the job losses around the 2 recessions of the early 1980s. Note that the job losses here represent equivalent losses in today's employment terms, with the job losses for those 2 recessions converted to a % decline from the previous peak, and that decline percentage has then been applied to the October 2008 employment peak Iowa experienced around the time of the most recent recession. The early 2000s recession was the equivalent of a 40,000 job reduction, and it took 57 months to achieve the former employment peak. The early 1980s recessions, due to its significant impact on the agricultural sector, was the equivalent of a 139,000 job loss, and it took 100 months to achieve the pre-recession peak. By comparison, the U.S. recession that began December 2007 had a delayed impact on Iowa, and with the employment peak here occurring October of 2008. The resulting job loss was about 59,000, and the recovery has added back about 13,000 since the September 2010 bottom. The arrow on this graph depicts the recovery path as it has appeared prior to the recent benchmarking. The jobs recovery now appears to be weaker than previously estimated. To summarize, after proper adjustment, the month of March produced good net general fund revenue growth, and over the past 2 months, growth is 3.6%. The Bureau of Labor Statistics revised employment figures show that calendar year 2011 was not as good an employment growth year as originally reported. While employment growth continues to remain positive, the rate of growth must accelerate if Iowa employment is to reach its previous peak anytime soon. I appreciate your interest in Iowa General Fund revenue. Goodbye, and please check out the next monthly video memo out the first week of May.